Okay, welcome back. So now what we're going to do is we are going to calculate the capacity of our hospital beds. Okay, so we can think of the capacity of the hospital beds as how many bed nights do we have and how many bed nights would our patients need. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put here like number of hospital beds as constraint. Okay. And we're going to start off with the number of beds. Okay. So based on the case, there are 89 beds, right? In the hospital right now. And we're going to go ahead and multiply that by the number of nights per week. Okay. And 7 nights a week, right? And that's just kind of given. Okay. Equals number of bed nights per week. So that's 89 beds, 7 nights a week equals 623 bed nights per week. Okay. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and this is 7 because regardless of whether we're doing surgeries 5 days a week or 7 days a week, the patients are staying can stay in the hospital, right? Because the bed is there. And so maximally we have 623 bed nights per week. So now the question is how many nights does the patient stay? And I'm going to go ahead and say divided by the average length of not surgery, but stay. Okay. Okay, average length of stay. And the average length of stay right now, the case isn't super specific about this, but it did mention that some patients stay 3 nights, some stay 4. So I'm going to go ahead and put 3.5 just to kind of split the difference here. Okay. And I'm going to make this an assumption because we kind of don't know, right? Divided by the average length of stay equals, available patient stays per week. So I'm going to write average length of stay per patient. Okay. Average length of stay in bed nights per patient. That way we can keep our unit math straight, right? Okay. Equals that divided by that. Okay. So, okay. So we have 89 beds, which are each one of those beds is available 7 nights a week, which means we have 623 bed nights per week. If each patient on average stays 3.5 nights, then we can accommodate 178 patients in any given week. Okay. And so if we can, based on our hospital beds, accommodate 178 patients per week, right? But we can conduct 840 or 200 surgeries, right? Based on the number of operating rooms that we have. Our constraint is still the number of hospital beds, right? Because we can accommodate fewer people in our hospital beds than we can accommodate in our operating rooms. Now, ask yourself, okay, between the number of hospital beds and our surgeons, which one of those two things is the bottleneck in the Shouldice patient process? Is it the number of hospital beds that we have, or is it the number of surgeries that our surgeons can complete? Pause the video and kind of think about it a little bit and your justification, and then return when you're ready for an answer. Okay, welcome back. So if you said it's still the number of hospital beds that is our constraint, then you're correct, because the throughput, the capacity that the hospital beds can accommodate is lower than what the surgical staff can accommodate. Our hospital beds can accommodate 178 people, but our surgical staff can only accommodate 180 people. Okay. Now, if the operating room was a constraint, I'm going to change this to 7, right? If we only conduct surgeries in our operating rooms for 7 hours a day, then between the 3 of these, the operating room would be the constraint, right? So we need to find the minimum of these numbers in order to identify the bottleneck of the system, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and say that this is the capacity of the hospital beds, okay? And then I'm going to write here, constraint of Shouldice patient process. I'm going to change constraint to bottleneck. Okay. And I'm going to say the minimum of this number, and this number. Okay. So right now, the minimum is 175. The smallest capacity, the smallest throughput is the bottleneck of the process. So right now, the operating room is our constraint. If we run the operating room 8 hours a day, then the hospital beds is the constraint. Okay. And we're going to do a little bit of formatting automation here. So now we want to automate, right, these numbers to look different based on whether or not they represent the bottleneck. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to select these cells. I'm going to hold down the control key, select these cells, and I'm going to choose conditional formatting. Highlight cell rule equal to. Okay. Now, if the cell is equal to here, this cell, right? And it has absolute references here, fill with red and red text. Click OK. Okay. So this number is equal to this, and so it's now red. If I change this to 7 hours, all of a sudden, this is now the bottleneck. And this changes colors, right? Because it is now the bottleneck. I'm going to go ahead and change that back. And let's say that doctors on average work 3.5 hours on surgery, right? If they work 3.5 hours on surgery, then this is now the bottleneck. Okay. So I'm going to kind of return it to its original situation where we have 4 hours worth of surgery on average for doctors, and then 8 operating hours a day, and 89 beds. And so we can see clearly now that the capacity of the hospital beds is our bottleneck. So at the most, right now, as the process stands, we can process 178 patients through the experience, the Shouldice experience, in any given week. And that is being constrained by the number of hospital beds in the clinic.